Hi, friends. My name is Jacqueline Rose, and I do not think it's a coincidence that you're here. I think you're meant to be here. So, if this message resonates with you, please click like and subscribe to my channel. This channel is about everything spiritual and much, much more. So, I have somebody here. I have a guest. And this is my friend, Amber. She reached out to me about a year ago with some struggles she was having with divorce and a spiritual awakening that was unfolding for her. And so I wanted her to really share her story about her divorce and how she started to discover self inquiry and how this helped her through her process of grieving and healing. So I'm going to let her tell you a little bit about her story.
Thanks. So, it all started kind of with my ex and I. We got together and very quickly got pregnant. And so we did the best that we could to adapt, but we didn't really know each other very well or ourselves because we were so young. And so we figured out pretty quickly that things weren't matching up. Like there was a disconnect. And so we tried separation, ended up back together. And over time, I realized that there were some, infidelity going on, but it started out more so with kind of just conversations with other females, and it progressed to physical cheating. And I thought that we had gotten past it, but what I realized after us talking and learning so much about kind of how we process things, we were just bypassing. We weren't actually healing from any of it. And we definitely weren't trying to find the root cause past surface level things. And so,
let me interrupt you.
Yeah, okay. Of course.
I want to know how, even in the beginning, how the infidelity made you feel in the relationship and in the marriage.
So I definitely felt like I wasn't good enough. I was trying really hard to make the relationship work. I was trying to be what, kind of society tells us our role is as female, as mother, as wife. Like I was trying to fulfill those roles, but I kept coming up short. And it was very defeating for me to not only feel like I was letting myself down, but then also letting him down, and definitely seeing that he was frustrated with even my attempts. And so with that, I kept trying, and the more I tried, the further away he got. And so I guess not the pandemic, before the pandemic hit, we had my birthday, which is New Year's Eve. And so I realized, because we were in a place that was so unhappy, and we had an actual really good friendship. Like we got along really, really well, but we weren't clicking.
You triggered each other a lot.
Yes, we triggered each other a lot, which I didn't know what that was until we started talking. We were really good until we weren't. And then something would happen and we would be just at each other. And it was really, really ugly. And so...
Let me stop. So in October is when she reached out to me. And this is not only, she has had this, tumultuous relationship, but they're friendships. And she reaches out to me in October because she found out something after they proceeded through their divorce. What was the thing that you found out?
So with my birthday, I decided that without knowing anything, just knowing how our dynamic had been going, I decided to move Eric upstairs. Because at the time, that was like the furthest of a separation that we could get. And I knew that something had to happen. So I moved him upstairs, and that was kind of the thing that sealed the deal for him. For me, it was kind of something has to happen. And this is like my kind of last ditch effort. I didn't realize really at the time, but that was like his end. And so moving to my birthday, like instead of New Year's resolutions, I decided to start making like New Year's intentions. And so 2019, right around the time the pandemic was starting, I made a New Year's intention to be intentional. I was like, I don't like the way we're living. I don't want to do this anymore. Like, I don't want to live like this anymore. Not necessarily, I was still on the fence about the whole divorce part, but I definitely knew that something had to happen and I didn't want to live that way anymore. I wanted to be intentional.
You wanted a shift. You
Yes.
needed some kind of shift.
I needed a shift. Like, I was craving a shift. And so, after the pandemic hit, we actually got a lot closer for a bit of time. And then things just started getting rockier and rockier and rockier. And so I actually was the one that initiated the divorce. And so he agreed. He was like, yeah, this really isn't working for us. And so 6 months after the divorce, or after we separated and sold our house and, you know, went into living on our own, 6 months later, I found out that he had been having an affair for the past like 2.5 years. And so that's around the time that I reached out to Jacqueline because
what was surprising to me is that she reached out to me, and I have to say that like there was already this like consciousness starting to change in her, because he had admitted it to her and he had told her about like triggers and the way that he felt, and she really understood his point of view. Mm-hmm. So when she reached out to me and she told me that like, I get why he did it. He's explained it to me, but I still have a problem processing this. I'm still grieving it, which is very normal. And so tell me more about, like, you know, once I started working with her, I really started teaching her about her ego and her thoughts and our traumas that we have as children and why this actually could have happened and how we could have prevented it. Yeah. And, you started to talk to Eric about this, or how did that happen? Like,
Yeah, so there was a lot of processing, and I felt like I've gone through all the stages of grief probably a couple times.
Times over and over, yeah.
I like to learn lessons multiple times. I like to really perfect them.
Yes.
And so I had already had a really hard time with the separation and the divorce aspect of like this season was ending. And so I already was having a hard time processing that. But then the affair, actually, when he first told me about it, I was extremely understanding. Like, I totally get it. Like, I pretty much knew the entire time. And I always just had that like gut feeling, that intuition of like, I'm pretty sure this is going on. And if it was going on, I would understand because I knew that our dynamic wasn't meshing. Mm-hmm. Like it wasn't healthy. No, it wasn't healthy. But even like when everything was good and it was so good, I knew that something was still missing. Mm-hmm. And so I would have totally understood. And when he told me, I was like, I wasn't crazy.
Did those feelings of not good enough pop back up in those moments?
Not right away. So initially at first it was 100% like understanding. Like I just got it.
She's a better woman than me. Okay.
I mean, I'm not gonna lie. Like I was really upset, but I was like, fuck, I can't fault you. Like I get it. And so, but that's why I feel like I went through the stages of grief because it was a roller coaster and Jacqueline got to ride it with me. It was a great time and we're still on it. Like we're at a chill part right now. Yeah. But, it definitely was one of those things that I felt like I tried so hard to be that person and I still failed. And it was a really hard realization because I had expectations of what my life was going to look like. I had expectations of what my family was going to look like. And we created a family. And so then those expectations...
That dream died.
Yeah. It was just like, it was falling apart. And I didn't know how to process. But I remember when I called, or when I messaged Jacqueline, I was like, I don't ever want to feel like this again. but it wasn't in a like scorned kind of way. It wasn't like, I'm never gonna fall in love again, I'm putting up all these walls. It was like, there has to be a way. And I didn't know what I was even asking for at the time, like, but I'm like, there has to be a way to heal from this and to prevent this from happening again. And then she was like, oh, there is.
Yeah.
There is a way.
So for some reason, my brain really picks up on patterns and behaviors because I can pick it up on myself. I do have blind spots, of course, but I can pick up patterns, and I noticed one of the biggest patterns of Amber and her ex is blurry boundaries. And so a lot of when she would describe what was going on, I was like, oh, y'all never set boundaries. And so tell me how you started to set these boundaries with Eric.
So at first I didn't. It was a lot of crash and burns.
Mm-hmm. Lots of triggering.
Lots of triggering, and then just like doing stuff that you shouldn't be doing as exes. Like having conversations that shouldn't have happened, having,
when you're still healing and y'all are talking about things that, for instance, what would have been a conversation you think that you shouldn't have had with Eric and you wish?
So I felt like, he had mentioned he wanted us to be friends, and he was able to heal through certain things faster than I was. I think because we were in very different situations. We were in very different scenarios where I'm having to heal from the divorce affair and a continued relationship, whereas he just had to get through the divorce. And I'm not going to say he didn't have to heal from the affair, but I think it was just
different.
It was very different. And so he was like, I want us to be friends. And I'm like, yeah, me too. Well, what do I talk about with my friends? Dating. In which dating is so weird now. And so having those conversations didn't really go very well. And
she found out through me helping her and just pointing out that, like, right now, maybe eventually that can happen, but that's something that needs to grow over time, and you have to learn how to communicate, and you have to know people's love languages and their triggers and why they're triggered by the way, and then try to have compassion for it. And it has to work on both sides. And that takes a lot of like laying bricks.
Yeah.
Lots of arguments, lots of triggers, lots of coming back together.
Yes.
Which I have to say, they have, I mean, it's only been a year since we started talking. They have done a very amazing, magical, like 360, which in a very short period of time. And this one wanted to heal really quickly.
It feels like it's been the longest year
I know.
of my life.
When I looked up a year, I was like, I knew it was a year that we had started talking, but I was like, oh shit, like, that's crazy.
To me, it's still not fast enough, but
I know.
Can't have it all. But yeah, we started, in my grieving process, one of the hardest things for me to do was to ask him for space. Because for the past 10 years, we were in each other's lives every single day. Now, whether it was pleasant or not, that's besides the point. But we were in each other's lives every single day. And I got to a point where I was like, I can't. Like, I cannot have communication with you. Now, we have 2 kids together, so it wasn't complete radio silence, but the small talk and the how are you doing and the what's going on with your life and, him being the person I turned to when something bad happened. My dad was in the hospital. Well, usually I would call Eric, or like he would be with me. And so it was weeks before he knew that I was dealing with any of that, And so asking him for space so I could allow myself to process was really difficult. It proved to be really helpful, but it was hard at first. And so putting up those boundaries, and I still kind of resort to old habits of, just being overly helpful. And a lot of times, people are like, why are you doing all that? I don't know, because it's just in my nature. But I am getting better.
People pleaser.
Yeah.
People pleaser. And when you people please, you I was a people pleaser. Sometimes I still am, obviously. That's why we are aligned to each other. But sometimes when we people please, we put our own needs in the background.
Yep.
And that creates blurry boundaries that you're doing things that you really authentically don't want to do.
And resentment. Lots of resentment.
During this process of me helping her, I was teaching her about the ego, which is something I talk about. If you follow me, I talk about it all the time. I think it's very important to understand it when we're trying to develop our ego. And so what did you learn about your ego during this process?
So a lot. So the funny thing about ego is I feel like in general, people, spiritual and not, use ego a lot. And a lot of times, you know, when you think of somebody who's egotistical, oh, well, they're full of themselves. And the one thing that I've realized that I kind of feel like bringing awareness to is that, like, that's actually not most of it. You know, you can have a very, very strong ego and not be, you know,
boastful or like...
Yes. Where that's like, to me, that's always what I thought about. You know, when people are like, oh, you have to do ego work, it's like, but I'm not
like
conceited. Like, I'm not full of myself. So it's like, what am I don't understand.
I almost feel like your ego is where your triggers lay.
Yeah, for sure.
It's like whatever is triggering you, it's this identity, this ego that's telling you, well, this happened in the past.
Yep. And so it's like your fight or flight, you know, and it's the part of you that is supposed to keep you safe, except for...
It keeps you in the same behaviors.
Yeah.
Because safe is familiar, but familiar, if your behaviors aren't good, familiar is not serving you.
It's not a place you want to stay.
So you have to like reroute behaviors. And that's really what I teach a lot of people, is how to react differently, how to pause, how to just reroute your reality. Because if you always react the same way, you will always get the same scenario between you and Eric.
Yes. And so the one thing that I found out about my ego is that it is very loud. It is very strong. And I found that it's still kind of an issue with me. I've been doing my shadow work for a really, really, really long time. But it still creeps up. And I mean, even like this week, today, it's like anytime I want to do something that's outside of my comfort zone, I immediately feel like you can't do that. You're not going to be successful. And
that's that inner critic. It's the ego. So if you don't know what the ego is, it's that inner little critic always telling you what you can and cannot do. It's the identity that you form, you create in your mind. And so, like, are you talking about today getting on video?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Like, our ego wants to be like, you've never done that before. What are you doing? And what's going to happen? Blah, blah, blah. It's all the past stories.
Trying to figure out what to wear.
Yes.
It was a situation.
Yes.
I've changed 1,700 times. And I changed 3 more times when I got here. And I'm like, my bra strap is showing. And it's, you know, my ego is like, everybody's going to see that.
Yeah. So that's what I, you know, during coaching somebody, I really teach them about that inner critic and rerouting that inner dialogue. And to notice it, first of all. A lot of people don't. Like, I've literally talked to people and they're like, I don't have an inner dialogue. Well, we all have an inner dialogue. Now you need to notice what it's saying. And especially when you're in a relationship with somebody, I always say it's the story that you're telling yourself. That's my biggest thing. And I'm like, what are you telling yourself? That's the ego voice telling you, creating a story. And so when they would get triggered, there was always some story, some story that they were creating on both sides, and it wasn't the full picture. And so I try to come in and go, well, let's look at Eric's point of view. Let's look at the full picture of things, so you can not be hurt by what he's doing, but kind of understand what he's doing. And then readdress it, then go back to it and say, hey, you know, let me communicate in a better way.
Yeah.
And they have been amazing at doing this. I mean, really amazing about communicating better. They still get triggered by each other. Awesome. I also wanted to ask you, since we're talking about it, what is y'all's relationship now?
So now it's amazing. It's weird.
And I want to give a little backstory on this real quick. So, because we didn't really get into this. So, there was an affair that went on, and he is still with the person that he had the affair with. And Amber has been on and off supportive of it, and actually is friendly friends with the person that he had the affair with.
Yeah.
And it's incredible because I tell Amber she got something I don't got. But it's amazing to watch because I'm coaching her through it. But at the same time, like, even my triggers come up and I'm like, oh my God, Amber. But how is this relationship again? How is this relationship between you?
So it's been a journey, and we're still on it. Like, it's still, you know, it's an everyday thing where, you know, at first I was really, really upset. I was pretty much like your typical girl who...
But you were understanding, and did that switch to upset? So was it both? Okay.
So, and it's funny because I have this conversation often where my ego and my higher self are talking to each other.
Me too.
All of the time.
It's like somebody talking shit and the other one like, no.
Yes.
It's I always say it's the devil and the angel on the shoulder.
It's 100% like all of the time they're talking to each other. Where it's like, I would be, you know, your typical female that is hurt and be like, excuse me, like, this is not okay. That's my life. Like, that was supposed to be me.
That's been a big obstacle that I've had to keep retraining and rerouting, reframing for her. What is right now is what is supposed to be, and this is always working for you. And so we had to find out why it was working for you. But when our mind creates this illusion of the story, what we're supposed to have, then we hold on to this resentment when maybe the story that you're gonna have is gonna be more beautiful than the story that you thought you were supposed to have.
100%. And like, you would say that, Eric would say that. I'm like, y'all are full of shit. Like, let's be honest. Like, y'all are full of shit. Like, this is not going to be some beautiful, you know, Lifetime original. Like, no, this sucks. Like, that was supposed to be my life. And I tried to do everything right, and I still failed. And I'm still not being chosen, even though I'm freaking fun and awesome and all the things. And it was like, no. My higher self was like, you need to sit down. You need to take a deep breath and realize that
there's something beautiful unfolding.
There's something amazing unfolding. And while you thought that was going to be your life is going to be something amazing and like incredible. And if you would just stop being so damn fussy and sit down and take a deep breath, you would realize the path that you're on is the path that you were supposed to be on. And everything has happened for you, for your greater good. And that was one of my like favorite sayings or favorite mantras is, this is happening for you. Yeah, this is happening for me, not to me. Like, what is the lesson? There's a lesson in everything. And the lesson and the root like cause of all of the evil was me not feeling chosen. I realized, and this is when the shift really happened for me, accepting them as their relationship is today and not the people they were making hurtful choices, was the root cause of me being so hurt was because I didn't feel chosen, because I didn't feel good enough. But working with Jacquline, I realized that
that had been there before
this shit started a long time ago, and Eric just so happened to fulfill that trigger. But it was because, you know, people talk about their childhood traumas and, you know, like trauma response and stuff like that. And I remember the first time Jacqueline asked me, when or what was the first incident that made you feel not good enough? And I was like, I can't think of one.
I remember that.
I can't think of one. And I really did. Like, I tried to think about it, and I was like, I can't think of anything. And she was like, well, you know, what was your childhood like? It was awesome. I had a great mom, you know, super, super, independent, like strong, like badass, like single mom who did it all. And I'm like, I had a great life. But it wasn't until I realized that my trauma was super, super subtle. Mm-hmm. And I had no idea the impact that it had on me until we started talking. And it was because my mom would come in and she would overcorrect everything I did. I could not do anything without her suggesting a different way, doing it a different way, telling me all the ways that it was wrong. And she was doing the best that she could. She thought she was being a good parent by coming in and taking over, because I guess she thought I was going to learn by watching her. But what it ended up doing for me was I learned how to be dependent on other people.
And not trust in yourself.
This week, like the past 2 weeks, I'm like uncovering that part where it's like, I have never trusted myself to make the right decision. I've never trusted that I could do things on my own. And so I ended up with these guys who never actually chose me because I didn't know how to choose myself. I didn't know
trust yourself.
Yeah.
So your outer, I always talk about this, and it's hard to describe it unless you're in your life. But if you have a partner that is showing you that you're not good enough, it's showing you that it's a belief that you have in yourself. I talk about that with my husband, that my husband was overcritical. That's what I believed. He was overcritical. So I never felt ever good enough. I could never clean enough. I could never be pretty enough. And I never felt that way with my mother either. I never felt like I could be good enough for her to stop drinking. And so it's these traumas that just replay out in your life. And we have to get to the core and fix those traumas, or at least be aware of them. She wasn't even aware. They call them big T traumas and small T traumas. And so small T traumas would be like her mom constantly checking over what she's doing. So subconsciously, you have a belief that, oh, I can't do anything right? Obviously, my mom's looking at things, but you don't even realize that you have these beliefs until you get older. And then there's something huge that's presented to you.
Yeah. And it's honestly, it has created a lot of problems in my life, not just with Eric, with coworkers, with bosses, with friends, where I am extremely sensitive to criticism, even if it has nothing to do with me. Mm-hmm. If I hear someone criticizing something else, I immediately internalize it, and I'm like, do I do that? Have they seen, oh shit, I do that too. They must think terribly about me too. And it's just no, Amber, nobody's talking about you. It has nothing to do with you.
But I see people do this. They create narratives. Our mind creates a lot of narrative story. What's this? That's the one thing, if anybody can take anything away from this video, is what is the story that you constantly tell yourself? I also wanted to ask you, what's been the hardest part of your journey?
I would have to say letting go of expectations and letting go of attachments. Mm-hmm. Those are probably the two things that have really been hard for my brain to wrap itself around, is when we have expectations and we're attached to outcomes. We're not fully present in the moment.
And not letting life flow.
Yes.
It has to be like this, and if it's not like this, then we're disappointed.
And I have a very controlling personality because of that. Mm-hmm. Because I have attachments, because I have expectations. And so I feel like it gives you a false sense of security if you know the outcome. But we really don't know the outcome, because at any point somebody could make a different decision and totally hijack your expectations and take it to a different level. And then you're like, yeah, I wasn't expecting that, and now I don't know what to do, and now I'm freaking out and I'm upset, and it didn't go that way.
A lot of this work is just learning to let life unfold and be okay with that.
Yes, be okay with it.
Whatever it looks like, being okay with it, noticing the story. Also, I wanted to ask you, what was the main lesson that you learned from the whole affair? What's the main thing you learned about Eric? Because I don't want anybody to think that like Eric is a bad guy.
Mm-mm.
You know, I believe that cheating is just a, manifestation of something that's going on inside. So there was a lot of problems going on before the cheating. It's just the cause. Or no, not the cause, the effect.
Like the symptom.
The symptom of what's going on. And
Yeah.
so I want to know the lesson that you learned. What's the biggest lesson? What's the biggest takeaway? And what did you learn about Eric that you didn't know before this year?
So I feel like the biggest lesson that I learned about with the affair, and I guess it kind of goes hand in hand with what I learned about Eric too, is that honestly, this stuff starts early, like in our childhood. Like, if you are raised in a household where you have traumas, whether they're big T's or little T's,
which we all have some kind of traumas going on.
Until you have an awareness about it, you're going to try to fill those voids with whatever you can, with whatever makes you feel good. And based on your love language, it could be a wide array of things. But I think that the reason that infidelity is so common is because we all have some level of trauma that we're trying to fix, and we just don't have the tools and the awareness to do it correctly. And so instead, we have fuzzy boundaries, and we are living in the moment and not thinking about the consequences, and just, kind of feeling what feels good at that time.
And we take a lot of like behaviors from our parents and how they reacted to things. Mm-hmm. And then we're not really hyper aware of that. Mm-hmm. Like I realized I was my mother and I reacted like my mother, and my mother was not successful when it came to communication. So why would I communicate like her? But I always was convincing. My ego mind was hiding that shit in the shadows. Was trying to show me how I wasn't like my mother, and not showing me how I was like my mother.
100%. And I feel like with the affair, I just really honestly realized that we're all capable of it. Yeah. We are all 100% capable of it. And maybe we didn't because the circumstances weren't right, or because, we're lazy or whatever, but we're all 100% capable of it. And the one thing that I did realize about them is that, like, we're all made from the same things. We all want the same things. We all want to be wanted. We all want to be chosen. And what I realized is that they are not the same people. We have all been on this journey together, and we're all healing. We're all, growing and making a ton of progress together and separately. And so they're not the same people. They just so happen to actually be a good match. Mm-hmm. And I am supportive of that because I love them. Because I finally love myself. Mm-hmm. And I didn't realize, because I've always been a very positive person, I love myself surface level. I know I'm a good person. I think I'm funny. You should follow me too, because I'm great. But really, I always thought I loved myself. But what I didn't realize was that I didn't love myself unconditionally because nobody else had. I wasn't taught that love is unconditional. I was taught that you get praised, you get, attention from, doing good in school, or being pretty, actually doing something right. I will never forget when I made the squad, my mom literally asked me, "Are you sure? Are you sure you got the right letter?" Mm-hmm. Okay.
Not good enough.
What?
Yeah.
I was up every morning practicing every night. I practiced this shit all the time. If I didn't make it, that really sucks.
We're talking about cheerleading squad too. We were both cheerleaders, not on the same squad.
But yeah, I'm why aren't we celebrating this? Why am I getting questioned? And so, actually doing things the right way, that's when the conditional love came in. And so now that I know that love is not supposed to be conditional, like, I've learned to love myself unconditionally, even when I get triggered, even when I react poorly, even when I'm on the roller coaster and, a mess.
With awareness, when you get triggered and you have awareness, it doesn't mean that you're like an angel all the time, because I'm not. Because if you ask my husband, people always, today somebody said you're an angel, and I was like, ask my husband. Because I still get triggered, I still get mad. Really, the closest people to us are going to trigger us the most.
Yep.
But the awareness of it gives you the opportunity to start to dissect that trigger, and then also come back and show up differently and say, hey, I got triggered. I'm sorry I got triggered. Let me tell you the story I was fucking telling myself.
Yes.
And can we discuss this? So,
and I like to give everyone a heads up. Like, hey guys, so I'm very triggered by this situation, so I'm just gonna hang back for a little bit, because if I talk to you, it's probably gonna be short and not pretty. And so it's not always received well, because sometimes that triggers other people.
Yeah.
And so
when you start showing up differently, it's gonna trigger people, because then your identity is changing. The identity that they formed in their mind about you is changing. You're not reacting the same. So it's going to trigger them, or they might be receptive of it. It just, you just don't know until you show up differently every time. Because I know I triggered people in my family after saying, look, I can't do that. I won't do that. It's just not part of my character, and I don't want to do it anymore. And people are like, what the fuck? You can't say that.
Mm-hmm. Well, it also, though, like, that's also not our responsibility, which is something awesome that I've learned. And it's very freeing that you can be your authentic self. You can get triggered. You can tell people your boundaries. You can set boundaries. And it's not your responsibility on how people receive that information. Mm-hmm. And that was one of the things that, when I was telling them that I was making this video, I let them know. I'm like, are y'all comfortable? Because part of my healing journey is the whole part about the affair. And I'm like, and they were really, really supportive. And that was awesome for me. But I told them, I'm like, I can't control how people respond to this. And my goal with this video was not only to showcase how amazing Jacqueline's like guidance has been for me. Like, I could not have gotten this far in this amount of time. She says it's short, but whatever.
I keep telling her, I'm like, it's just been a year. I've been telling her this whole year, like, it's not even a year yet. Like, you got to give yourself time to process. And what I love about this is we're going to do some more parts to this video, not necessarily just about the affair. But I also want to do a part 2 with her. Both of us have kids on the spectrum, and dealing with divorce and separation and handling kids
that's hard in itself,
that are neurotypical.
That adds a whole other level.
And I really don't think there's and maybe it's just there's not enough videos out there about conscious parenting, and then conscious parenting with these very sensitive kids, and then conscious parenting dealing with a divorce, right? And so we're going to do kind of a series of different videos of how we work through parenting, because again, we get triggered by our kids. We don't show up perfectly.
And then we parent the way we were parented.
And then as we're parenting, we know we're parenting the way we were parenting, and then we feel bad about ourselves, and then we have to give ourselves credit. It's a whole fucking thing. And so I want to come back to this video, or come back to sitting down and having a second series with her. If you're interested in anything about conscious parenting, if you have any kids that are on the spectrum, I would love to talk about this and have her back again. Thank you so much, Amber. I'm so excited.
Yes, me too.
And please follow her. She has, I forgot to say, she has a boutique called Coral Feather, and she's an entrepreneur, and she promotes
a lot of stuff going on.
Yes. She's promotes conscious living and conscious parenting. And if you have anything that resonates in this video with you, please reach out to Amber.
Yes. Because I have a huge, like, my biggest goal, aside from, showcasing Jacqueline's services, is that, divorce and infidelity, there's a really good chance that this could be prevented with conscious parenting. And it's not a 100% foolproof guarantee that it's going to prevent it, but why not give our kids the best foundation to being whole human beings from the time that they're born until the time that they die? Mm-hmm. Like, why not give them the best foundation of
that you can provide? Because our parents provided the best foundation, but they weren't understanding of the traumas. Our parents don't even understand the traumas that they have.
No.
And to be able to understand your traumas and know how it can be perceived as in your child and how they can carry on these patterns. For me, when I realized that, it was like, okay, girl, you got to get in gear because this is your child. You got to
break generational curses.
Yes.
And so if it still ends up happening, or, if you do find yourself getting a divorce, or if you find yourself, getting a divorce because of infidelity, or even if you just find out that your spouse is, unfaithful, it doesn't have to be the end. Like, it doesn't have to ruin your life. And there's so much growth and there's so much healing that can happen between everybody involved that it could turn into this incredibly beautiful thing. And so I'm hoping with, us bringing awareness and kind of talking about something that's different than most of society views divorce and infidelity. Mm-hmm. Because we all know somebody that's been divorced, and we all know somebody that's cheated or been cheated on, or, doing something on the side or whatever. We all know, but everybody's surface level. Oh, girl, did you hear about Becky? Like, oh my God, I can't believe. Like, stop. Like, just stop. Mm-hmm. It's not positive. It's not helpful. And it's surface level bullshit. Mm-hmm. Like, instead, why not say, like, oh, shit. Like, I'm really sorry that happened to you. Like, because it's devastating. Mm-hmm. Just because we're conscious does not mean we're not devastated. It's devastating. Mm-hmm. But instead, to be like, damn, like, I'm really sorry that happened to you. Who was his childhood like? Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
could you imagine having a glass of wine talking about that? Like, being like,
and what led up to it?
Yes, like, tell me about his childhood. Like, let's figure out, like, where did this start? Mm-hmm. Like,
so that's what we wanted to show you in this video. We wanted to show you that there's a different way of handling things, and I wanted to really represent her. So if there is somebody out there that resonates with what she's saying, that you could reach out to her. She would be very happy to help you in any way possible. And stay tuned. We're going to have more videos. I think about 2 more videos. We are, yes, I'm so excited.
I mean, we like to talk, though. We could make this a whole season.
Right. The conscious housewives, right? I always wanted to be a housewife without the drama. Anyways, I love y'all. Thank you so much, and much love.